Hey, my name is JCP. And do you ever get those pieces of media that just tear you in half, opinion wise? Maybe a show that was really, really good right up until the ending. Maybe a game that has excellent controls and is super fun to play, but the story and writing are so terrible you don't know how you're going to make it through it. Or maybe that one ex partner who was actually not that nice, but you really needed the validation and love at the time, so you stuck with it anyway. Yeah, too real. Regardless, the subject of today's video is just one of those things, a figure of high highs and low lows. And that's kind of an oddity for me because I can't really think of many other figures that have such huge disparities in quality. Today we're going to be taking a look at Studio Series Leader Class Dark of the Moon Shockwave. Getting right into it, and this figure looks truly phenomenal. I mean, whew, this has to be one of the most spectacular looking pieces in my collection, and I think it's one of the only figures whose appearance I value a little bit more than the play value. I generally consider myself a play over display collector, and I don't buy figures based on how they look, I buy them based on how fun they look. But man, I mean, this thing is just so pretty. Well, not really, he is one ugly mother tanker, but in a good way, you know? He's gross, he's kind of creepy, but at the same time, he's this hulking, bulky creature. And I mean, he is a creature. Look at that head. I really like the sort of early movie Decepticon insectoid vibe that they had going on. He's even got little antenna and the little pincer mouth and obviously that iconic big shockwavy eye. I like that he's recognizable as Shockwave, and I think I should talk about the movie aesthetic for a bit because it's something I haven't covered yet. A lot of people don't like the movie aesthetic, and fair enough, I get it. It is messy, it is busy, it is very complicated, probably to the point of over complexity. But I think this figure wears it extremely well, and regardless of how you feel about the Bayverse aesthetic, you can't deny the incredible work that's gone into making this figure look as good as it does. I mean, every surface is just awash in this detail, this fantastic mechanical detail. Even the back looks good with these cool ass, just really nicely painted moving thrusters. And that's another thing, the paint. The paint here is so nice. He's got this great purple dry brush just all over him, on his rib cage, on his skull cap, on his shoulders. It is so pretty. It's also not screen accurate, and that's a good thing because he was just grey in the film. It's a very, you know, like every other Decepticon in those films. So I think making the figure have this sort of purpley wash, not only to make it look like Shockwave, but just look good, was a really, really nice decision on their part. And moreover, on the whole looking like an insect thing, look at that rib cage. I love this detail so much. It's on the screen model, but it's painted purple here, as everything should be. I wish my rib cage was purple. You know, it might be, I can't check. But I really like that it gives him this sort of exoskeleton vibe, and it really adds to how sort of insectoid he is. And it also gives him this sort of organic feel that I do think runs throughout with these more smooth edges here on the shins and this sort of bicep, this hard bicep on the arm. I feel like he's a bit more creaturey looking than robot-y looking, and normally I don't like that in Transformer. Like I really don't like Beast Machines figures because I think they all look less robot-y and more creaturey, and it doesn't work on them, but it does work here. I can't really tell you why. I think it's just because he's evil, and he's meant to be creepy, and he's meant to be freaky, and I mean, he is. He is creepy as hell. But like in a great way, in the best way. Another thing that adds to the sort of organic-y vibe, and also the elephant in the room of this figure, as while it does look spectacular in places, there are places where it looks less than stellar. Most notably, all the rubber bits. So many rubber bits, and like bad rubber bits too, and I'm talking like properly flaccid. I put that in the script and it sounds funnier out loud. But yeah, this thing, oh, it is just littered in this nasty, gunky rubber. And that's really upsetting because it so just detracts from the look of this figure. Ah, and the feel of this figure. And what most notably, it's rubber. It's not going to hold up with time. He looks about as good as me on a day out with friends, but breaks down about as quickly as me on a day out with friends. But enough gushing about how pretty he is. How good of a toy is he? How does he pose? Well, that's about as uppy-downy as the, as the looks are. First of all, you've got the head, and this has to be easily the most poseable head in my collection. It's on 2 joints, a ball joint and a hinge joint, and it has a cutout so he can look up, and he can look really down, and he can look over his shoulder. He can look all the way around. He can look upside down at you. Optus Nox is the most poseable figure in my collection, and this guy's head is still giving that one a run for its money. Actually, no, it is more poseable than that one's. It is more poseable than any of the Masterpiece figures I have, the head specifically. And then you run down to the arms, and they're just like average. Honestly, below average for what I expect for a leader figure. All he gets is universals, a bicep swivel, 90 at the elbow. 90 at the elbow. You could have done so much better. Like, there's nothing here in the sculpt. Well, obviously there is something here in the sculpting that's limiting it, but it didn't need to be there. And he doesn't even get a wrist swivel. He gets a little hand flap. You know, one of those hand hinges. His hand doesn't even fold in. So all it's good for is making my Shockwave fanfiction a real thing. The other arm gets like a thumb. Ew. Like good ew. But still ew. It does make me think, like, it does give me the sort of impression that the cannon here, which, for the record, looks spectacular. I love how daggery and knifey it is. And I really like the aesthetic they've got going on where it sort of just looks quite literally ham-fisted onto his arm. Like, it doesn't look like it's supposed to be there. It just looks like he's sort of grabbed a cannon and tore it off. And then you move down to the legs, and oh yeah, no waist swivel. Kind of annoying, but understandable, just based on this figure's design and how he looks, and also how he transforms to an extent. But the legs, great range. He kicks up, basically all you would want. He kicks back, more than what you would want. He kicks out all the way, thighs, knees, with nice adjustable kneecaps. They only go 90. But I think that's more forgivable than 90 at the elbows. But I would prefer more range at the knees. And he's got those great double-jointed feet. Kind of like how Origins Bumblebee does, but there aren't any weird feet jokes this time. The only problem with these ones is that the joints are a little loose and the heel spurs are not heel spurs. They're just kibble that happen to be at the back of his feet. So yeah, it's a posability of ups and downs, and it's so good. It's so good. I took some photos for this video to show you how good he looks, and they're probably being displayed on the screen, but it's just so frustrating that he's so almost perfect in that department. And finally, on the topic of the robot mode, we move on to the accessories. They're all weird, except for like one. You get his, previously shown off melded knife. He has 2 ports for this, one on the same arm. I prefer it underslung like this. I think that looks cooler. You can also put it on here, and that just doesn't work with the sculpt as well. It just looks sort of out of place. I think it fits better with the underarm. I think it's more molded to fit that. And that's a cool accessory. It's got some nice dry brushing, so does the tip of his cannon. Well, that's not dry brushed, that's just painted. This one is dry brushed. I just wish it wasn't made out of such a dreadful material. Next up, we have what I would think is the smallest things in Transformers meant to represent characters. So not the smallest Transformers, they don't transform, but they are the smallest things meant to represent characters. Here we have tiny brains, and we are talking like Look how out of focus Shockwave is so that it can focus on Brains. And also, Wheelie here. And they are, like, shockingly well detailed. Wheelie has a lot of blue... No, not... I think he's blue casted and the black and red are paint. He has red on the eyes. You can't see because of the shadows. Can you even make that out? It's so small. I mean, they're both so small. And I think, Brains is also pretty well painted. I think he's all silver with the blue paint. So they're really well painted. They're really tiny. They're so tiny. I love putting them next to Titan class figures because they just tower over them. And finally, you get this guy, a parachuter. He gets a lot less paint. He gets paint on the face, and I think that's it. And obviously, he has his parachute. Doesn't work very well. You can actually... Shockwave has a few pegs on his backpack, and this guy has a peg hole on his foot. So you can actually replicate... That's not how you say words. Replicate Shockwave's death. So how delightful. So yeah, some interesting accessories. They're definitely the least high and low of the set. I think they're all just pretty cool. I don't know how to feel about Wheelie and Brains because I don't care for the characters, but I think I'm just kind of impressed by the figures and their existence. So yeah, I'd say the accessories are the least interesting thing about this set. So transformation on this figure is not great. It's not very fun. Nothing, well, not nothing, but a lot of things don't really tab in how they're supposed to. The hose is absolutely dreadful, and one point it broke. You'll see that in a minute. I think it's there. I try to fix it. The peg just bent, and now it won't go where it's supposed to. So yeah, not a fun transformation. There's no really satisfying or very clever bits. And I don't really enjoy doing it, which kind of sucks, because I really like this figure. Now, while I didn't enjoy that transformation, it's hard to argue with those results. Or maybe it isn't. Some people are probably really not into this alt mode, but I'm here to excuse it. Number one, he never got an alt mode in the film. Why would they bother trying? There's no screen accuracy to adhere to, and also it means that the robot mode looks absolutely banging. And number two, this is still good. This is still cool. You're just mean. So what if his arms are up here and his legs are down here and that's it? It's still a cool alt mode, except for the fact that it's broken. But what's really good about this alt mode is how blatantly Decepticon this is. Like, this thing exists to kill you. It is here to crash into your house, to shoot your mother, to eat your dinner, and then impale you on its spikes as it roams to your next door neighbors. Getting into the finer alt mode details, and by the way, this thing doesn't hold together very well, so bear with me. I've always loved this face at the front aesthetic that him and Megatron, which I think he might be a retool of. I've heard whispers. Yeah, no, may or may not need to disprove that. It might be one of those weird retools like Starscream from Blitzwing where it looks like a retool, but actually it's all new parts. But yeah, talking about the little face in the front, I think this is great, and I love it on Megatron, and I love it here, because he's a Decepticon. He doesn't need to disguise himself. He's gonna look you in the face as he shoots you with his big fuck-off cannon. And speaking of the big fuck-off cannon, it's a big fuck-off cannon. It's exactly the same as in the robot mode, so it's still cool. He has the spikes, as previously mentioned. They have some nice dry brushing detail. I could have talked about them in robot mode, but I didn't. Look at the treads. He has really nice, but really subtle tread detail, and I really like that. It's on the other side, and there's some brown paint in there. You probably can't tell. Maybe you can. But yeah, more adding into this great paint budget. And onto that is the lovely previously mentioned thrusters that have this nice sort of bronze paint that might just be the same as this, but there's less here, so it's not shiny, but you've got that nice silver, and they wiggle around, and I don't know why, but like they do, so I'm not gonna complain. Yeah, it's clearly just like a guy pulling a funny pose. He's got his legs around his head and his arms are just up here. I think this helps with the illusion, and covers up this nasty, nasty gap. And it just makes him a little bit, just that little bit more full-formed. He's still, like, gappy from the top, but yeah. Overall, I think it's a great vehicle mode. I think it's really fun. The hose sucks, but all hoses suck. So, yeah, I really like it. So let's talk about the overall figure. This will probably be the longest final thoughts segment, but whew, this is going to be a weird one. So final thoughts on this figure is that I love him, and I think he is great. But do I recommend him? No idea. Not a clue. I've never been less sure of something in my life. Do you like the look of him? You'll probably like him. Is he worth £50? I've had £50 worth of fun with him. It's so hard to say whether or not he's good or worth it. Is he better than the original? I don't know, probably. I don't have that either, so I can't compare. But I like him. I like his little pals. Actually smaller than my eye. Sorry, I have to keep going on about how small they are. If you think he looks good, I think you should get him. And if you don't like him, then it stops being my problem. See you later.